the research paper. This video will guide you through the process, the things that you need to do to successfully complete the research paper in this course. But before we talk about what you need to do, let's talk about why you need to do it, why it's important to have a research paper in this course. And the short answer is because any history class should involve some aspect of research and writing. Some assignment where you're taking multiple sources and you're reading them thoroughly and you're finding out what each author is saying and how they're presenting their argument or their viewpoint and how they're supporting it. What evidence or facts are they presenting to support their viewpoint, and then comparing those different viewpoints together. And that's what you're doing with this research paper. So that's the short answer as to why it's important that we have this research paper in this course. But let's go a little bit deeper. Let's look at the syllabus and let's scroll to the second page and let's review the student learning outcomes, because really anything you do in any course should ultimately point back to the student learning outcomes. These are the areas in which you should demonstrate competency by the end of this course. And so for History 17A, you'll see that the research paper really feeds into student learning outcome number 3. The student will interpret, analyze, and evaluate historical research, including primary and secondary sources, maps, and archaeological evidence. Now, we're not using maps or archaeological evidence in this research paper. We're using secondary sources. We also analyze a lot of primary sources in our weekly assignments. Primary sources are sources that were created at or around the time of the event we're studying. So when we're studying the Revolutionary period in American history, Thomas Paine's Common Sense or the Declaration of Independence, both written in 1776, would serve as primary sources. Whereas a historian writing about those events years later, in our textbook, for example, or in these articles or chapters that we're reading for our research paper, those are secondary sources, sources created by historians years later. All right. So this is why it's important that we have this research paper as well, because it helps us demonstrate competency in an area in which we need to demonstrate competency, student learning outcome number 3. All right, so that's why we're doing the research paper. Let's go back now to the home page of the Canvas site for History 17A and talk about what you need to do. All right, we're going to go to the third module here titled Research Paper, and you're going to see a list of things. So at the top here, we have the instructions page, what to know about the research paper. Okay, so I'll click into that in just a moment. But then we have 3 different topics. These are the 3 topics that I've given you that you can choose from, and you need to choose one of these topics. So which one of these you choose is completely up to you. Choose whatever interests you the most, because there's going to be a lot of reading involved. So you want to have some level of interest, hopefully, in one of these 3 topics. But you got to choose one of these. And then underneath each one of these topic pages is a PDF that has all of the required sources for that given topic. So here we have topic 1 was the American Revolution, conservative or radical? In other words, was it a conservative movement, something that really built on the traditions and the practices of life that were already in place, or was it radical? Did it completely buck the trend and enter Americans into a new way of social and political life? All right, so that's topic number 1. If you chose that topic, right below it, this is where you're going to find all of your required sources for that topic. More on that in a second here, but just so you know, these are the 3 topics that you can choose from for History 17A, and then right below them are the sources, a PDF that has all of the sources already packaged there for you. You don't need to do any additional research. All you need to do is make sure that you dive into these required sources, because you need to discuss every one of these sources in detail when you get to step 2 and ultimately step 3, your final paper. All right. So then below that, we have the 3 steps of the research paper. Step 1 is where you choose the topic, okay, one of these 3 topics. and you declare that. You write a bibliography, create a bibliography for all of the required sources. I'll show you where to find that information. And then you research the authors of each of these sources and create a short biography, just so you know who this author is. And specifically what we're looking for is, what is their professional background? What is their academic background? What else have they published? What is their area of expertise? And we really want to just know why we're reading anything from this specific author. Who are they, and what is their area of expertise? Why should we consider them an authoritative source on this particular topic? All right. Step 2 is where you've really done the reading at this point now. You know what you're supposed to write about. You've read every single one of your sources. You've created detailed notes in an outline form. And now you know where you're heading with your paper, so you can create your introductory paragraph, at least a rough draft of it, so that I can see how you're going to launch into your paper. And then you create just a working title for your paper. And in step 3 is where you take all of your research and all of your notes, and now you form it into a proper paper with an introductory paragraph, a conclusion paragraph, and a series of body paragraphs in between, in which you analyze each one of your required sources and synthesize them or compare them to each other to ultimately draw out what was effective or ineffective about each one of these viewpoints that you read in your required sources. Okay, so that's your research paper module. Let's dive into a little bit more specifics. Again, I said at the top here is your instructions page. So you'll find out a lot more information about step 1, including an example here. You'll understand a little bit better what step 2 is. And then in step 3, you can see some of the formatting requirements so that you know what you need to hit on when you create your final paper. All right. Okay. So that is that. Let's go back now to the research paper module. And let's say, for example, that you chose topic number 1. Was the American Revolution conservative or radical? Let's click into that page, because this is where we're going to find our instructions for this paper, or our prompt, the things that we need to address or accomplish in this paper. That's all right here. And then we also can find our 3 required sources for this topic. So if you chose topic number 1, you are going to need to understand your prompt. So let's read it. These articles, these up here, offer opposing views of the American Revolution. One point of view claims that the American Revolution was a conservative movement because it did not fundamentally change the nature of American society. The opposing view states that the revolution did create profound changes in American society and politics and was therefore radical. Now, you need to address these points. Which author or authors present the view that the American Revolution was actually conservative? And then which author or authors believe the revolution brought profound changes to American society in the 1700s, or in other words, was radical? You need to discuss each author's viewpoint. You need to evaluate the evidence and information each author provides to support his or her viewpoint. Okay, so think about it this way. If an author is presenting the notion that the American Revolution was conservative, it did not fundamentally change the nature of American society, the author is going to have to present some facts to you to support that, right? They're going to have to show how life did not change. So what remained the same? What were they building upon leading up to the revolution? And how did they continue that same pattern or trajectory of life after the revolution? All right. And on the other side of the coin, if they're arguing that the American Revolution was a radical movement, that it profoundly changed American society and politics, they're going to show you a before and after picture, right? They're going to show you how Americans lived and thought and functioned before the revolution, and how that was different, how it was radically altered after the American Revolution. All right, so what they present, the facts that they present, is considered their evidence. That's how they're supporting their particular viewpoint. So once you've assessed what the author's viewpoint is and how they're supporting that viewpoint, what evidence they're presenting, now you're going to determine what's strong about that argument and what's weak about it. So the effectiveness level of it. And this will get more in depth as you read all of your sources. Because after you've read all of your sources, you'll say, wow, you know what? Initially, I thought that this source was really effective. But now after reading this source, I can see where source number one kind of failed to address some really important information. And maybe source number two failed to address some of the things that source number one addressed. So maybe they both have strengths and both have some weaknesses, right? And you're going to do that across the board for all of your required sources. And again, for topic number one, we're talking about these three required sources here. A New Kind of Revolution by Carl Degler, Interpretations of American History, The American Revolution by Daniel Boorstin, and Was There an American Revolution by Robert Nisbet. Those are your three required sources, okay? So going back to the prompt, now that we've identified the effectiveness of each article, how strong their viewpoint is presented and how strong their evidence is, or how weak, and the reasons why, then we're going to determine which of these articles, based on its logic, evidence, and clarity, provides the most persuasive view of the topic. Which one persuades you the most? Why do you think that this particular source is the most effective out of all of them? You know, or why did you come to the conclusion that it's really a combination of sources that presents the most effective argument, but individually taken, the authors failed to give a comprehensive view of the American Revolution? All right, so let me simplify that again. When you click into this topic page, you just need to understand what you're attempting to accomplish. All right. And you need to be able to read your paper back after you've written it and see that you have addressed all of these points. If you have, then when I read your paper, I'll be able to see that you addressed all of these points and you'll be in good shape. But if you don't address all of these points, or you don't discuss and analyze in depth and detail every one of your required sources, let's say you only do 2 out of 3, then your grade's going to suffer on your final paper, because you need to analyze and discuss all of the required sources and you need to hit on all of the prompt points. All right, so that's what you need to accomplish in your final paper. Now let's go back really quick, and now that we know that, that we know what we need to achieve in this paper, now we're going to open up the sources for topic number 1. All right. Again, this is all operating on the scenario that you chose topic number 1. Okay, so we're going to open it up, and here's our first source. Right? Out of Our Past, The Forces That Shaped Modern America is the book by Carl Degler. A New Kind of Revolution is the chapter from that book. But here's Carl Degler, one of your required sources, and you're going to read this all in depth and detail, and you're going to, you can print this or save it, but you should be underlining things, making notes, again, keeping your prompt in mind so that you can have detailed notes about what this author's viewpoint is regarding whether the American Revolution was conservative or whether it was radical, and not only what he's saying, but how he says it, how he presents it, and how he supports it. What facts is he presenting as evidence? So you're going to read through this in depth and detail and take good detailed notes. And you're going to do the same thing for all of your required sources. So let's keep scrolling down here. And see, this is a lot of extra reading, which is why you need to chip away at it over the course of the semester up until the due date. If you wait until the last minute, then you're probably going to have a much harder time completing it. All right, so let's get to the next source. Here we go. So the next source would be Daniel Borston. Here you go. And this is from Interpretations of American History, the American Revolution. And you're going to do the exact same thing. Read this source in full depth and detail and take good detailed notes, again, so that you can answer all of the things in your prompt. All right, and you'll do that again for the third source, which in this case would be Robert Nisbet. All right, so that's all of your required sources. Now, let's say you chose topic number 2 or topic number 3. Well, you just do the same process that I just showed you for topic number 1, but you do it for topic number 2. You'll click into the page, you'll see all of your required sources, you'll read your prompt, understand what you need to accomplish in this paper, and then you will find your sources just below it. And there's where you can print them up and start highlighting and underlining and making notes as you read through each one of your required sources in depth. Okay, same exact thing applies for topic number 3. All right, you just got to click into that topic page first, read your prompt, understand what you're supposed to achieve so that you know what to look for in each one of your sources as you read them, so you can be much more effective in taking your notes. And here are your required sources. And when you're ready and you know what your prompt says, so you know what you need to look for, now you click into your sources for topic number 3, download them, print them, whatever you need to do so you can start highlighting, underlining, making notes, and preparing for step 2 and ultimately for step 3, your final paper. All right. So that is really everything you need to know about how to prepare for your final paper and the steps that you need to take to write your final research paper. If you demonstrate in your paper that you have thoroughly read and understood your topic's prompt, and you have thoroughly read and analyzed and discussed in your paper every one of your required sources, you're going to do just fine on this paper. All right. But if you leave sources out, or you don't address all of the points on your prompt, then obviously you will not do as well on this paper. So a big part of it is just following the guidelines and instructions in detail. All right, if you have any questions, you can email me and I will be happy to clarify. But otherwise, that is what you need to do to be successful on that assignment.